The chamber was massive, floating in the darkness of space around a dying star. Inside, representatives from 12 different alien species sat in their designated sections, watching the humans with barely concealed satisfaction. Commander Han Junho stood at the center of the circular room, his military uniform pressed and perfect. Beside him, Ambassador Park Minji held a data tablet, her face calm despite the anger burning in her chest. The vote had just finished. 12-0. Humanity was being expelled from the Galactic Council. High Chancellor Vexthar rose from his elevated seat, his reptilian scales gleaming under the artificial lights. His mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his species, revealing rows of sharp teeth. He spoke in the common language, his voice echoing through the chamber. The Council has decided. Humanity has proven itself too aggressive, too dangerous to remain among civilized species. You hoard resources. You expand too quickly. You refuse to follow the proper protocols. Park Minji wanted to laugh at the hypocrisy. Every species in this room had done far worse during their early spacefaring years. The Vexthari had glassed 3 planets. The Chlorothi had enslaved 2 entire species before the Council forced them to stop. But humans were different, apparently. Humans were the threat. Trade Minister Kulrath clicked his mandibles together, a sound of pleasure in his insectoid language. He had been the one to orchestrate the economic sanctions that had slowly strangled human trade routes over the past 5 years. Now he was seeing his work completed. You have 30 standard days to evacuate all council space, Vexithar continued. All colonies, stations, and outposts must be abandoned. Any human vessels found in council territory after that deadline will be impounded or destroyed. Junho's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He had expected this. They both had. The writing had been on the wall for months. The Council had never truly accepted humanity. Humans were too young, too unpredictable. Too much like what these older species had been before they became comfortable and soft. Park Minji stepped forward. The chamber fell silent. She looked around slowly, meeting the eyes of each representative. Some looked away. Others stared back with triumph or indifference. On behalf of humanity, she said, her voice steady and cold, I accept the Council's decision. We will evacuate as ordered. We will leave your space and your systems. Vexthar nodded, clearly pleased. Several other representatives relaxed visibly. They had expected arguments, perhaps even threats. The humans' compliance was refreshing. Park Minji continued, her next words carefully chosen. We came to this council in peace 50 years ago. We offered friendship, trade, and cooperation. You have chosen to reject that offer. Very well. We will leave in silence, but I promise you this, the galaxy will remember this day. Something in her tone made a few of the representatives shift uncomfortably. But Vexthar merely laughed, a hissing sound that filled the chamber. Is that a threat, Ambassador? No, Park Minji said softly. It is a statement of fact. History remembers everything. She turned and walked toward the exit. Junho followed, his hand resting on the data device at his belt. Inside that device was something far more valuable than any treaty or trade agreement. For the past 5 years, while the Council had been busy isolating humanity, human engineers and technicians had been doing something else. They had been watching, learning, recording, every piece of alien technology that humanity had been allowed to see, every scientific paper shared through Council databases, every ship design glimpsed in Council shipyards. All of it had been carefully documented, analyzed, and stored. The Council thought they were expelling a weak, dependent species that relied on alien technology to survive. They had no idea what humans could do with the information they had gathered. As they walked through the corridors toward their ship, Junho activated his device. He had one last task to complete, While Park Minji had been speaking, he had been running a final data extraction program through the Council's own networks. Security was lax. The Council never imagined that humans would dare to steal from them on their last day. The download completed just as they reached the airlock. Junho smiled for the first time that day. Their ship was small, designed for diplomatic missions rather than combat. But as they boarded and began the departure sequence, Junho looked at the data readouts and felt a surge of satisfaction. Everything humanity needed was now in their possession. Ship designs, weapon specifications, shield frequencies, FTL drive calculations, industrial processes, even the biological data on every Council species. The Council had given humanity 50 years of access to galactic civilization. They thought they had been generous. In reality, they had given humanity something far more valuable, a complete education in advanced technology, wrapped up with detailed intelligence on every potential future enemy. Park Minji sat in the co-pilot seat as their ship pulled away from the Council station. Behind them, through the viewport, she could see the massive structure beginning to fade into the distance. Inside, she knew, the representatives were already celebrating. They were probably toasting their victory, congratulating themselves on eliminating a threat before it could grow too strong. "Let them celebrate," she said quietly. Junho glanced at her. "Ma'am, let them think they've won. Let them believe we're beaten." She pulled up a communication screen and began composing a message to Earth. "We have work to do, Commander. A great deal of work." "Yes, ma'am." Junho activated the FTL drive, and the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, heading back towards Sol's system. "How long do you think we'll need?" Park Minji thought about the data they had collected. She thought about Earth's industrial capacity, about humanity's talent for reverse engineering technology, about what humans could accomplish when they were truly motivated, when they were angry. 5 years, she said, maybe 7. The Council has made a grave mistake today, Commander. They've given us time, and they've given us a reason. As their ship streaked through hyperspace toward home, neither of them looked back. Behind them, the Council continued their celebration, completely unaware that they had just created their own worst nightmare. They had taken a species known for its adaptability, its stubbornness, its refusal to quit, and they had given it both the knowledge and the motivation to become something far more dangerous than they could imagine. The Council grinned as the humans left. They had no idea what was coming. 5 years had passed since humanity's expulsion from the Galactic Council. In that time, something strange had happened. Human space had gone completely silent. No trade ships crossed into Council territory. No diplomatic messages were sent. No exploration vessels pushed past the Sol System's boundaries. It was as if humanity had simply vanished, retreating into their home system and closing the door behind them. The Council noticed, of course. They discussed it in their meetings, wondering if perhaps the humans had collapsed into civil war or economic depression. Some suggested sending reconnaissance missions to investigate. Vexithar had dismissed the idea. "Let them rot in their isolation," he had said. "They are no longer our concern." If the Council had sent those scouts, they would have discovered something very different from what they imagined. Deep in the asteroid belt beyond Mars, Dr. Kang Daeho stood in the observation deck of Research Station Prometheus. The station didn't exist on any official records. As far as the rest of the galaxy knew, this was just another nameless rock floating in space. In reality, it was the heart of humanity's greatest scientific endeavor. Daeho was tired. He had barely slept in 3 days, running calculations and simulations for the new drive system. But as he looked at the data on his screen, exhaustion gave way to exhilaration. It worked. After 5 years of failures and near misses, it finally worked. "Admiral Choi needs to see this," he muttered to himself, already composing the message. Across the solar system, Admiral Choi Sun-hee sat in her office aboard the orbital shipyard above Earth. The yard was one of 20 hidden construction facilities humanity had built in the past 5 years. Each one was tucked away in places where Council sensors were unlikely to look, inside asteroid fields, behind gas giant moons, within the Kuiper Belt. She reviewed the daily reports from each facility. The numbers made her smile. 512 ships completed, another 300 in various stages of construction. Every single one built to specifications that would make the Council's vessels look like antiques. Her comm unit buzzed. She recognized the encryption code immediately. "Dr. Kang, please tell me you have good news." Deho's voice crackled through the secure channel, barely containing his excitement. "Admiral, the Prometheus drive works. We just completed a successful test jump. No reliance on Council jump gates, no predictable exit points. We can go anywhere, anytime." Soon he felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The drive had been the final piece, the one technology they couldn't quite crack from the Council data. Humans had needed to innovate, to go beyond what they had learned. And they had succeeded. "Excellent work, Doctor. Begin production specifications immediately. I want that drive on every ship in the fleet within 6 months." On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, Captain Lee Hyun-woo ran through his pre-flight checklist. His ship, designated Raptor 1, sat in a pressurized hangar carved into the moon's icy surface. The vessel looked nothing like the diplomatic ships humanity had used during their Council years. It was sleeker, more aggressive, built entirely from human innovation mixed with reverse-engineered alien concepts. "All systems green," reported his co-pilot, a young officer named Kim Tae-young. "Weapons charged, shields at maximum, new drive system online." Hyun-woo nodded and opened a channel to flight control. "Control, this is Raptor 1. Requesting permission to begin combat trials." "Permission granted, Raptor 1. Try not to blow up." "The Admiral gets cranky when we lose test pilots." Hyun-woo grinned and fired the engines. The ship lifted smoothly from the hangar floor and shot out into the black of space. Once clear of Europa's gravity well, he activated the combat systems. Targets appeared on his tactical display, old satellite debris marked for destruction. He unleashed the new weapons. Beams of concentrated energy, far more powerful than anything the Council used, lanced through space. The debris vaporized instantly. The shields held perfectly even when he flew through the explosion. Everything performed beyond specifications. "Control, all systems performing at 120%. This ship is ready." While engineers and pilots pushed humanity's military capabilities to new heights, intelligence operative Yoon Ji-soo worked from a very different kind of facility. Her station was small, barely larger than a standard cargo container, and it drifted in deep space at the edge of Council territory. From here, she monitored Council communications and movements. What she saw made her reports to Earth both encouraging and concerning. The Council was fracturing. With humans gone, the economic systems that had relied on human trade were collapsing. Worlds that had depended on human food exports were facing shortages. Industries that had used human-manufactured goods were struggling to find replacements. More importantly, old rivalries were resurging. The Klarathi and another species called the Torgash were fighting over mining rights in 3 systems that humans had once mediated. Small skirmishes were breaking out along various borders. The Council's unity had been partly maintained by having humanity as a common concern. Without that external factor, cracks were showing. Jisoo compiled her data and sent it through the encrypted quantum channel back to Earth. The message would arrive instantly, one of the few pieces of Council technology that humans had not just copied but improved upon. Back on Earth, in a secure facility beneath the Swiss Alps, Ambassador Park Min-ji reviewed Jisoo's reports alongside Admiral Sun-hee and Dr. Deho. They met in person rarely, but this was important. They needed to decide on the timeline. "The Council is weakening," Minji said, highlighting sections of Jisu's report on the holographic display. "They're fighting among themselves. Their economy is struggling. This is the moment we've been preparing for." Daiho nodded. "From a technical standpoint, we're ready. The new drives work. Our ships are superior to anything in the Council fleet. Our weapons can penetrate their shields. Their weapons can't penetrate ours." "And the fleet?" Minji asked, turning to Sun-hee. The Admiral pulled up a tactical display. 512 combat-ready vessels, 800 support ships, 40,000 trained crew members. We can deploy within 2 weeks if necessary. Minji studied the numbers. 5 years ago, humanity had limped away from the Council with barely 100 ships, most of them civilian vessels. Now they had a fleet that could challenge the entire Council military. Not because humans were naturally superior, but because they had learned. They had adapted. They had taken Council technology and made it better. "There's something else," Daiho added, pulling up a separate file. "We studied the biological data we extracted from Council databases. Every species has weaknesses. The Vexithari can't handle certain sonic frequencies. The Chlorati have vulnerable points in their exoskeletons. We know how to fight each of them effectively." "But will we need to fight?" Minji asked. "That's the question. We could reveal ourselves peacefully, request readmission to Galactic Society." Sun-hee shook her head. "With respect, Ambassador, the Council expelled us. They won't simply accept us back because we ask nicely. They'll see us as a threat, especially once they realize how much we've advanced." "Then what do you suggest?" "We demonstrate strength first, not with aggression, but with undeniable capability. We show them that we're not the same species they kicked out. We make it clear that any attempt to isolate us again will fail." Minji was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the humiliation in the Council chamber 5 years ago. She thought about Vexthar's mocking laughter, about how casually they had discarded 50 years of human cooperation and friendship. "Very well," she said finally. "We return, but on our terms. Admiral, begin moving the fleet into position at the Council borders. Dr. Kang, I want our best technology on full display, and someone get Jisu back here. We'll need our best intelligence operative for what comes next." As the meeting ended and the 3 leaders went their separate ways, Earth's orbital space hummed with activity. Ships that had been hidden for years began moving into formation. Crews that had trained in secret prepared for deployment. Humanity was about to step back onto the galactic stage, but this time they would not be asking for permission. The Council had given humanity 5 years of isolation, 5 years to grow, 5 years to become something new. They were about to learn what happens when you back a species like humanity into a corner and give them time to prepare. The quiet years were ending. The border world of Kelthis Prime had seen better days. 2 Council species, the Vexthari and the Torgash, had been fighting over the planet's valuable mineral deposits for 3 months. What had started as a trade dispute had escalated into open warfare. Small fleets from both sides orbited the planet, occasionally firing on each other while ground forces clashed on the surface below. The Council had sent mediators, but both sides ignored them. Without humanity's diplomatic corps to help negotiate, and with the Council's authority weakening, there was little anyone could do but watch the situation deteriorate. Then something new appeared on the sensors. Captain Marth, commander of the Vexthari cruiser Vengeance, stared at his tactical display in confusion. A single ship had just emerged from FTL at the edge of the system. But it hadn't used any of the standard jump gates. It had simply appeared as if space itself had opened up to let it through. "Identification?" he demanded. His sensor officer worked frantically at his console. "Unknown design, sir. Energy signatures don't match any species in the database. Wait. There's a transmission coming through." A voice spoke in perfect galactic common, calm and unbothered by the chaos around it. "This is Commander Shin Minho of the Terran vessel Resolute. To all combatants in this system, you are ordered to cease hostilities immediately. You have 30 seconds to power down weapons and withdraw to defensive positions." Marth felt his scales flush with anger. Terran, humans, the species the Council had expelled 7 years ago. He activated his comm system, his voice dripping with contempt. "This system is not your concern, human. Leave immediately or be destroyed." The Torgash commander, Captain Vrax, added his own threat over the public channel. "The Vex Thari speaks truth. Depart, or we will unite to remove you." There was a pause. Then Commander Shin's voice returned, still perfectly calm. "Your 30 seconds are up. This is your final warning. Cease hostilities or be removed." Marth laughed and ordered his weapons officer to target the human ship. Across the battlefield, Vrax did the same. For once, the two enemies had a common purpose. They would destroy this arrogant human vessel together, then return to their own fight. Both fleets opened fire simultaneously. Dozens of energy beams and missiles streaked toward the Resolute. It was enough firepower to destroy a Council battleship 3 times over. The human ship's shields lit up as the weapons struck, and held, and didn't even flicker. Marth's laughter died in his throat. "What?" Before anyone could react, the Resolute moved. It accelerated at impossible speeds, weaving between the two fleets like a dancer. Its weapons fired, precise, controlled bursts that targeted engines and weapon systems exclusively. Within seconds, 3 Vex Thari ships were drifting powerless. 4 Torgash vessels followed. The Resolute didn't slow down. It continued its devastating ballet through the battlefield, disabling ships with surgical precision. Crews barely had time to panic before their vessels went dark. No ships were destroyed. No crews were killed. But in under 3 minutes, both fleets were completely helpless, floating in space without power or weapons. Marth stared at his dark console in shock. His ship's emergency power would take 10 minutes to restore basic systems. Every vessel in both fleets was in the same situation. Meanwhile, the human ship hovered in the center of the battlefield, completely undamaged, its shields still at full strength. Commander Shin's voice filled the silence. "This system is now under Terran observation. Any further hostilities will result in the immediate removal of all military assets. You have 1 hour to collect your disabled vessels and withdraw to your respective territories. Failure to comply will result in the impoundment of your ships." Then, as if to emphasize the point, the space around Kelthus Prime shimmered. Dozens of ships emerged from FTL, all of them bearing the same unknown design as the Resolute. They took up positions throughout the system, silent sentinels making it clear that the single ship had not been alone. News of the incident reached the Council within hours. Emergency sessions were called. Sensor data was analyzed and reanalyzed. The conclusion was inescapable and terrifying. Humanity had returned, and they had become something far more powerful than anyone had imagined. High Chancellor Vexthar stood before the assembled council, his aged scales darker than usual with stress. The chamber was filled with nervous chatter and panicked whispers. The holographic display showed the tactical recordings from Kelthus Prime, playing on repeat. "This is impossible," muttered one representative. 7 years ago they were barely spacefaring. How did they advance so quickly? Trade Minister Clorath, his mandibles clicking anxiously, had a different concern. "The question is not how. The question is, what do they want?" As if in answer to his words, every communication system in the chamber activated simultaneously. The Council's technicians scrambled to their stations, but it was already too late. Someone had taken complete control of their systems. Ambassador Park Minji's face appeared on every screen. She looked older than when she had left 7 years ago, but her eyes were harder, more determined. She wore not diplomatic robes, but a simple military-style uniform. Behind her, through a viewport, council members could see hundreds of ships in formation. "Greetings, esteemed members of the Galactic Council," she said, her tone polite but cold. "I am Ambassador Park Minji, representing the Terran Federation. 7 years ago, you expelled humanity from your organization. You deemed us too primitive, too aggressive, too dangerous for civilized space." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We have spent these 7 years in reflection and preparation. We have considered your judgment of us. And we have decided that you were correct about one thing. We were not ready to be part of your council, but not for the reasons you believed." Vexithar found his voice, though it came out as more of a hiss. "How dare you hijack our systems? This is an act of war." Park Minji smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "Chancellor, we just demonstrated at Kelthus Prime that if we wanted war, you would already be defeated. We disabled 2 fleets without destroying a single ship or killing a single crew member. Your own military analysts are reviewing that data right now and reaching some very uncomfortable conclusions." She was right. Around the chamber, military advisors were whispering urgently to their representatives. The tactical data was clear. The human ship had demonstrated capabilities far beyond anything the Council possessed. Speed, shields, weapons, sensors, all of it was superior. "What do you want?" Kularath asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Humanity requests an audience before this council," Park Minji stated formally. "You have 48 hours to respond. We will be waiting at the edge of council space. I suggest you use that time to review your sensor data and consider your options carefully." The transmission ended abruptly, and the council's systems returned to normal function. But the silence in the chamber was deafening. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The balance of power had shifted dramatically, and none of them had seen it coming. Vexithar slammed his clawed hand on his console. "This is blackmail. We will not be intimidated by these upstart apes." But even as he spoke, his military advisor was showing him additional data. Sensors across council space were now detecting human vessels at multiple border points. Not invading, not attacking, but simply present. Watching, waiting. The message was clear. Humanity could go wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted, and the council couldn't stop them. Several representatives began talking at once, their voices rising in panic or anger. Some called for immediate military mobilization. Others demanded negotiations. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Trade Minister Kularath looked at the frozen image of Ambassador Park on his personal screen. 7 years ago, he had watched her leave in defeat, believing humanity would fade into obscurity. He had been so certain that expelling them was the right decision, that it would preserve the Council's dominance. Now he realized the truth that was slowly dawning on everyone in the chamber. They had made a terrible mistake. They had taken a proud, capable species and humiliated them. They had given them a reason to grow stronger. And worst of all, they had given them time to do it. The Council had grinned as the humans left 7 years ago. Now, as those same humans returned with overwhelming force and restrained fury, no one was grinning anymore. The galaxy had changed, and the old order was crumbling. The only question remaining was what would rise to replace it. The Council's response to humanity's ultimatum came in the form of warships, not words. Vexithar had convinced enough representatives that showing weakness would be the end of the Council's authority. If they negotiated with the humans now, every species in the galaxy would see it as capitulation. Better to fight, he argued, and prove that the Council still had power. Perhaps the humans were bluffing. Perhaps their technology wasn't as advanced as it seemed. Perhaps one ship getting lucky at Kelthus Prime was just that, luck. The Council Military Command identified 3 human fleet positions at the border and launched simultaneous attacks. Each strike force contained over 100 ships, representing the combined might of multiple Council species. It was the largest military deployment in Council history. Fleet Admiral Choi Soon-hee received the tactical reports from her command ship, the Indomitable, positioned near the Kepler Station trading post. She had expected this. Vexthar was old, proud, and stupid, a dangerous combination. He would rather go down fighting than admit he had been wrong. "All ships, battle stations," she ordered calmly. "Remember your training. We disable, we don't destroy. Target engines and weapon systems only. No civilian casualties." Captain Lee Hyun-woo, now commanding a squadron of 20 advanced fighters, listened to the Admiral's orders through his comm system. His squadron was positioned near the human fleet's defensive perimeter, ready to intercept incoming attackers. The Council fleet emerged from FTL in a massive wave, their formation tight and aggressive. They opened fire immediately, hundreds of energy beams and missiles streaking toward the human vessels. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations to come. The human shields absorbed the initial barrage without strain. Then the human ships moved, their new drive systems allowing for acceleration and maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. They wove through the Council formation like water flowing around rocks, their weapons firing with devastating precision. Hyun-woo led his fighter squadron into the heart of the enemy fleet. His ship was small, fast, and almost impossible to target. Council sensors couldn't lock onto him properly. The human stealth systems were too advanced. He picked his targets carefully, firing controlled bursts that disabled weapons arrays and engine clusters. Around him, his squadron did the same. 20 human fighters tore through a formation of over 100 Council ships, leaving destruction in their wake. But it was controlled destruction. Ships were disabled, not destroyed. Crews were left alive, floating in powerless vessels. At the second attack point, Commander Shin Minho's fleet faced similar odds. The Torgash had sent their best warships, confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm the humans. They learned, painfully, that numbers meant nothing against superior technology and tactics. Shin's vessels formed a defensive sphere that the Torgash couldn't penetrate. Every attack was absorbed by shields that seemed to have no upper limit. Meanwhile, human counterattacks were surgical and brutal in their efficiency. Within 20 minutes, the Torgash fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind 30 disabled vessels. But the real battle, the one that would end the war, happened at Kepler Station. The station was one of the galaxy's major trading hubs, home to billions of civilians from dozens of species. The Council fleet attacking there was led by Vexthar himself, aboard his flagship Dominance. He had committed nearly 200 ships to this assault, determined to break the human fleet and reclaim Council authority. Admiral Soon-hee watched the Council fleet approach and felt a mix of pity and contempt. They were using formation tactics that were centuries old, predictable and rigid. They hadn't adapted, hadn't evolved. They had grown comfortable in their dominance and forgotten how to actually fight. "All ships, Delta formation," she ordered. "Let's end this quickly. Civilian safety is priority 1. The human fleet moved into position, placing themselves between the Council fleet and Kepler Station. The message was clear. To get to the civilians, the Council would have to go through humanity first. Vexthar, watching from his command throne aboard the Dominance, felt a surge of triumph. The humans were outnumbered 2-1. They had made a tactical error by limiting their maneuverability near the station. This was his chance. "All ships, concentrate fire on their command vessel," he ordered. "Destroy the Admiral's ship and their fleet will crumble." The Council fleet focused its firepower on the Indomitable. The amount of energy directed at that single ship was staggering, enough to vaporize a small moon. The Indomitable's shields held. They didn't flicker. They didn't weaken. They simply held. as if the massive barrage was nothing more than a light rain. Then the human fleet opened fire. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Human weapons, far more advanced than anything the Council possessed, tore through enemy shields like they didn't exist. Ship after ship lost power, their engines going dark, their weapons offline. The human fleet moved through the Council formation with practiced ease, disabling vessels one after another. Yoon Ji-soo, now serving as Admiral Sun Hee's intelligence officer, coordinated targeting data from her station aboard the Indomitable. She highlighted specific ships on the tactical display, command vessels, ships with more aggressive captains, vessels that posed the greatest threat. "Admiral, the flagship is attempting to retreat," she reported. Sun Hee's expression hardened. "Captain Lee, take your squadron and disable the dominance. I want Vexithar alive." Hyun-woo grinned and banked his fighter toward the retreating flagship. His squadron followed, weaving through the chaos of disabled ships and weapons fire. The dominance was faster than most Council vessels, but it was still pathetically slow compared to human fighters. "Target the engines," Hyun-woo ordered his squadron. "Multiple precise strikes. I don't want that ship going anywhere." They hit the dominance from 6 different angles simultaneously. The flagship's engines exploded in controlled bursts, leaving the massive vessel drifting in space. Hyun-woo circled back and fired a specialized pulse at the ship's communication array, disabling it for good measure. "Package secured, Admiral," he reported. "Vexthar isn't going anywhere." Across the battlefield, the Council fleet was in full collapse. Ships that could still move were fleeing. Those that couldn't were surrendering. In less than an hour, the Council had lost 60% of its attacking force without the humans destroying a single ship. Admiral Sun Hee opened a wideband channel that every ship in the system, human and alien alike, could receive. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute authority. "To all Council forces, this battle is over. You have lost. Power down your weapons and await recovery vessels. Any ship that attempts to flee or continue fighting will be disabled. Any ship that fires on human vessels will be destroyed. These are your only 2 options." Then she switched to a channel directed at the Council chambers themselves, where she knew every representative would be watching in horror. "To the Galactic Council, we do not seek conquest. We do not seek revenge. We seek respect. For too long, you have treated humanity as inferior, as primitive, as unworthy. Today, we have proven that assessment wrong. We are willing to negotiate a new relationship, one built on mutual respect and equality. But make no mistake, the age of Council dominance is over." She closed the channel and turned to her crew. "Casualty report?" "0 human casualties, Admiral," came the response. "All ships report minimal damage. Shields held at all times." "And the Council fleet?" "Approximately 30,000 enemy crew members on disabled vessels. No reported deaths. Medical teams are already coordinating rescue operations." Sun Hee nodded, satisfied. This was what separated humanity from the Council. The Council fought to dominate and destroy. Humans fought to win, but they didn't need to kill to do it. That restraint, that measured application of overwhelming force, sent a more powerful message than any amount of destruction could have. Within hours, the Council formally surrendered. They had no choice. Their military was shattered, their authority broken, and their confidence destroyed. 3 simultaneous defeats, each one demonstrating human superiority so clearly that no one could deny it. Vexthar was brought aboard the Indomitable in restraints. The once proud Chancellor looked old and defeated, his scales dull with stress and shame. Admiral Sun Hee met him in the brig, looking at him through the transparent barrier. "Why didn't you destroy us?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You had the power. Why show mercy?" Sun Hee considered the question. "Because we're better than you thought we were. Better than you feared we might become. You judged us by your own standards, Chancellor. You assumed we would be conquerors because that's what you would have been in our position. But humans learned something from our own bloody history. Victory through annihilation is no victory at all. She turned to leave, then paused. The council will be reformed. You will stand trial for your role in starting this unnecessary war. But you will live. Remember that. Remember that the species you called primitive chose mercy when they had every reason to choose vengeance. As she walked away, Vexthar slumped against the wall of his cell, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. The council had underestimated humanity not once, but twice. First when they expelled them, believing they would fade away. Then when they attacked, believing they could win. Both times, they had been catastrophically wrong. 1 year after the war, the galaxy looked very different. The old council chamber, that massive structure floating around the dead star where humanity had been expelled 8 years ago, was empty now. The building remained, but not as a seat of government. It had been converted into a museum, a reminder of what happens when fear and arrogance guide policy instead of wisdom and respect. Ambassador Park Minji stood in what had once been the central chamber, looking at the newly installed plaque on the wall. The words were written in every major galactic language. Let this stand as a reminder. Never mistake kindness for weakness. She smiled slightly. It had been her idea to preserve this place rather than destroy it. Humanity needed to remember where they had come from, and the galaxy needed to remember what the old way of thinking had cost them. The new seat of galactic government was different. The assembly hall orbited Earth, a symbolic choice that had not been lost on anyone. It was smaller than the old council chamber, more intimate. The seating was arranged in concentric circles rather than hierarchical tiers. Every species had equal representation. Every voice carried equal weight. Park Minji now held the title of Secretary General of the new Galactic Assembly. She had been elected by unanimous vote, though she suspected some of that unanimity came from fear rather than genuine support. That would change with time. Trust had to be earned, especially after a war. She walked through the corridors of the old station one last time before returning to her shuttle. Her escort, Commander Shin Minho, followed quietly. He had become head of Assembly Security, a position that required both military expertise and diplomatic skill. "Do you ever regret it?" Shin asked as they walked. "The war, I mean. The people who died or were injured despite our best efforts?" Minji stopped and turned to face him. "Every day. But I regret the expulsion more. If the council had treated us with respect from the beginning, none of this would have been necessary. We didn't want war, Commander. We wanted peace. But we refused to accept peace at the cost of our dignity." They continued to the shuttle bay in silence. Across the galaxy, Dr. Kang Daeho was conducting a very different kind of mission. He stood in a lecture hall on the Clarathi homeworld, surrounded by scientists from a dozen different species. On the holographic display behind him, complex equations and ship designs rotated slowly. "The key to the shield adaptation system," he explained, pointing to a specific section of code, "is anticipatory modeling. Rather than simply blocking incoming energy, the shields analyze the energy signature and adapt in real time. This allows for more efficient power distribution and significantly higher tolerance." A Clarathi scientist raised one of his upper limbs, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "And humanity is willing to share this technology freely?" "We are," Daeho confirmed, "with some conditions. Any species that receives our technology must sign the Assembly Charter guaranteeing basic rights for all sapient beings. No slavery, no genocide, no aggressive expansion. Beyond that, the technology is yours to use and improve upon." Trade Minister Clarath, who was attending the lecture, approached Daeho after the session ended. The old insectoid moved slowly now, age and stress having taken their toll. He had been one of the few council members to escape serious punishment for his role in humanity's expulsion, mainly because he had argued for peace once the war began. "Dr. Kang," he said quietly, "I must ask, why share these advances? You could maintain technological superiority indefinitely." Deho considered the question. "Because, Minister, technological superiority doesn't guarantee security. It guarantees isolation and eventual resentment. We could hold our technology close and watch the gap between us and everyone else grow wider. But then we would become what the Council feared we might be, a dominant power that others would eventually unite to challenge." He gestured to the other scientists in the room, many of whom were still examining the equations on their personal devices. "This way, we lift everyone up together. Yes, it means we won't maintain the same level of advantage, but it also means we build genuine partnerships instead of enforced submission." Kularath's mandibles drooped in what Deho had learned was an expression of deep thought among his species. "Your people are either very wise or very foolish. History will determine which." "Perhaps," Deho said with a smile, "we are both." At the military complex on Mars, Admiral Choi Sun-hee oversaw the integration of the new unified defense force. Ships from multiple species now trained alongside human vessels, learning tactics and sharing information. It was a slow process, complicated by language barriers and cultural differences, but progress was being made. Captain Lee Hyun-woo had been promoted to wing commander and was currently leading a training exercise with a mixed squadron of human and alien pilots. Sun-hee watched from the command center as the ships maneuvered through a simulated battle scenario. "Wing Commander Lee reports 72% efficiency on the joint maneuvers," reported her aide. "That's up 14% from last month." "Still not good enough," Sun-hee muttered. "But better. Send Lee my compliments and tell him to push the integration training harder. If we ever face a real external threat, these crews need to function as one unit, not separate forces working in proximity." She pulled up the strategic display showing the entire galaxy. Human vessels were marked in blue, assembly forces in green, independent systems in yellow. The map was mostly peaceful now, with only a few border disputes and minor conflicts remaining from the old era. But Sun-hee knew this peace was fragile. There were species beyond the known regions, potentially hostile forces that might not appreciate the new power structure. The galaxy was large, and humanity had only seen a small portion of it. They needed to be ready. In the assembly hall back on Earth, a trial was taking place. Former High Chancellor Vexthar stood before a panel of judges drawn from 7 different species, including one human. The charges were serious: illegal expulsion of a member species, incitement to war, ordering attacks on civilian areas during the Battle of Kepler Station. The evidence was overwhelming. Vexthar didn't try to deny his actions. Instead, he stood with what dignity he could muster and accepted responsibility. "I believed I was protecting the Council," he said during his final statement. "I saw humanity as a threat that needed to be contained or eliminated. I was wrong. Not about the threat. Humanity is powerful and dangerous, but about what to do about it. I chose fear and aggression when I should have chosen understanding and partnership." The judges deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the verdict was guilty on all charges. But the sentence surprised many observers. Instead of execution or lifetime imprisonment, Vexthar was sentenced to 30 years of community service, helping rebuild worlds damaged by the policies he had championed. Park Minji had argued for this approach personally. "Killing him or locking him away serves no purpose except revenge," she had told the judges. "Making him help fix what he broke serves justice and gives him a chance at redemption." Not everyone agreed with the sentence. Some thought it too lenient, others thought it too harsh. But it represented the new philosophy that humanity was trying to establish. Justice, not vengeance. Rehabilitation, not punishment for its own sake. Months continued to pass. The galaxy adjusted to the new reality. Trade resumed, now flowing through Earth and human-controlled space as much as through the old council routes. Diplomatic relationships deepened. Several species that had been enemies for generations found common ground in the assembly. One evening, Park Minji, Admiral Sun-hee, Dr. Daeho, and several other key members of the human leadership met privately for dinner. It was a rare moment of relaxation, away from the constant demands of building a new galactic order. "Do you think we did the right thing?" asked Captain Lee Hyun-woo, who had been invited to the gathering. "Sometimes I wonder if we pushed too hard, moved too fast." Park Minji set down her glass and looked around the table at the faces of the people who had helped transform humanity from exiled outcasts to galactic leaders. "We did what was necessary," she said firmly. "The Council expelled us thinking we would disappear. Instead, we came back stronger. We won a war they started. And then, most importantly, we chose to build something better rather than simply replace one tyranny with another." She stood and raised her glass. "To the future. May it be wiser than the past." The others raised their glasses in response, but it was Admiral Sun-hee who added the final thought. "And may we never forget how we got here. We earned our place at the table, but we must remain worthy of it." Far from Earth, in a region of space that had once been forbidden to humanity, Captain Lee Hyun-woo prepared for humanity's next great adventure. His ship, the Explorer, was designed not for war but for discovery. Its crew was half human, half alien, a true joint mission representing the new era of cooperation. They were heading beyond known space, into regions that no Council ship had ever explored. There were mysteries out there, potentially allies or enemies, resources or dangers. Whatever they found, they would face it together. As the Explorer launched and its advanced drives carried it toward the unknown, Hyun-woo thought about how far humanity had come. 8 years ago, they had been expelled in humiliation. Today, they led a galactic alliance and were pushing the boundaries of explored space. The Council had grinned as the humans left, believing they had solved a problem. They had no idea that they had created something far more significant. They had given humanity the motivation to become worthy of respect rather than simply demanding it. And in the end, that made all the difference. The galaxy was changing. The old order of dominance and submission was giving way to something new, something better. It wouldn't be perfect. There would be setbacks and challenges, conflicts and compromises. But for the first time in galactic history, there was genuine hope that different species could work together as equals. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as partners. And the galaxy, for all its initial fear and resistance, was slowly learning that this new way might just be better than the old. The Council chamber remained as a museum, a testament to past mistakes. But the future was being written in the assembly hall, in joint military exercises, in shared scientific research, and in exploration vessels crewed by multiple species working side by side. The humans had left in silence, they had returned with thunder, and they had chosen to build with wisdom. That was the real victory.